The impact of climate change on Pacific Island nations is reaching critical levels, according to a new report from the international aid agency Caritas Australia. The study found that nearly a third of Papua New Guinea's population suffered food and water shortages over the last year because of global warming. And the main hospital on the Solomon Islands needs to be moved because rising sea levels mean it's regularly flooded. Here's Maria Tiimon from Caritas Australia with more. Maria, welcome. So it sounds as if the situation is just going from bad to worse.
Kona Mary, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk about what the report is all about. And I think before I do that, it's important to mention that Caritas Australia Caritas is the second largest humanitarian organization in the world, helping the developing countries and those who are most in need, and on human rights and to bring justice. And one of those issues is climate change. And so the report is very important because it's actually a collective voices from many of the Pacific Islands, and it's really human stories on climate change that's really support what the scientists have been saying. And so in our report, we focus on three themes, which are climate finance, sea level rise, and food and freshwater shortages in the Pacific Islands.
So what are some of the problems that the people you've been talking to are having as a result of climate change?
Look, as you already mentioned, some of the problems like Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands, but like Kiribati and Tuvalu, they are just about 2 to 3 meters above sea level, and most of the islands, when you stand in the middle, you sort of see both sides, the lagoon and the ocean side, and so they are very vulnerable to the rising sea level and climate change. And one of a good example was in 2009, when I was back in Kiribati, and some of the southern islands were really affected by the drought, for a long drought. And my friend, who is also, her name is Claire Andrea, she also has a story in that report, and she's very vocal on climate change. Her nieces were the babies. Her nieces died because of the water was very brackish in 2009. And this is just one of the example. And also one of my nieces, she's doing year 12 now. She wants to be a doctor, but she's very concerned about her future. Why should she study when everybody is talking about climate change? And I think that's very wrong. That's when we see climate change as an issue of justice and human rights for our people. I know that women in Australia have kids and grandchildren, and they are happy, look forward for their future. What are the young people in the Pacific, instead of looking forward for their dreams and future, they are so concerned about their future, and I think that is not right. And that's why I'm here to sort of as a report ambassador for Caritas Australia, but also to represent all Pacific Islands who are most affected by climate change.
What do you hope will be the response to you coming here and telling us about the conditions in the Pacific Islands? Is it about getting the message out to people, or is it getting the message out to politicians who are able to do something? Got the next UN climate change conference coming up next month.
True. Look, I think for us, Pacific Islands, climate change is about our very survival, while other developed countries like Australia, they see climate change is all about economy. And I think in the report we are urging Australia to ratify the 2016 the Paris Agreement by the end of 2016, and also to scale up its contribution to international climate finance to a fair share. I was in Paris at the UN Conference on Climate Change last December, and Prime Minister Jenbo promised to give $1 billion to help the vulnerable islands to adapt and mitigate climate change. And I think it's so wrong to, divert poor reduction programs or taking aid to use it as, to that funding. And that's why we are here, that we hope that Australia will can do better than that. A lot of people that they think that Australia is doing a lot on the issue of climate change. But again, according to the scientists, this is not enough. And I know that Australia can do better for its neighbours, Pacific Islands.
Maria Tiimon, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.